Welcome everyone. Today's webinar, it is called Getting the Most Out of Young Citizens, Remote Learning Options for Teachers, Students, and Parents. We are so glad to have you all here with us today. I am Jessica Hayes and I am your host for this evening. Our presenter today is Melissa Knowles. Melissa has worked in education for 17 years. She has earned several technology-related certifications and is currently working on a certification as a technology coach. In her work as a certified trainer for social studies school service, she builds curriculum maps, develops micro-credentials, and trains educators on using the programs, as well as leads and hosts webinars on various topics. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Melissa.
Awesome, and I was able to complete that certification. I'll get my certificate in September. I'm so excited.
Hey, congratulations.
Yes. All right, so let's get started. There. Okay, so we are now in this new virtual world, blended world of learning. First, before you type this in the chat, if you will, I'm going to go ahead and pop that poll up, just to see, how are you beginning your school year? Will it be on a virtual platform totally? Will you be all in person? Or will you do a blended form where some days virtual, some days you'll be in person? So what are you utilizing this year, or at least to start your school year? Oh, wow, so both completely virtual, awesome. Oh, and let me show you the poll, share results. So completely 100% virtual, wow. We are blended at our school, as is Jessica at her school. So awesome. As you're moving into this environment of strictly virtual with your students, do you have any questions about that type of instruction? How are you going to utilize it with your students? Do you have concerns? Type those in the chat. I want to try to address, especially with our Young Citizens program, these concerns that you're having, if possible. So I'll put that in the chat. Oh, Peyton is waving to you, one of the characters, one of the friends in the neighborhood at Young Citizens program in Maplewood. I love the cartoon, the comic aspect of this. So Jessica, do we have any questions?
Yes, one is keeping the kindergartens focused.
Oh yes. Okay, so just a little bit of background. I have worked K-8, but currently I teach library at a kindergarten and pre-K school. I don't see pre-K in the library, but I do with kindergarten. So I'm right there with you, trying to figure out those waters and what that looks like with our kindergartners. So let's take a look at what we are going to talk about today. So we're going to look at some effective teaching strategies in a remote setting, such as keeping those kinders and any student active and engaged in their learning. And then we're going to apply those strategies with Young Citizens resources that are available to you on the digital platform. Okay. I didn't know when you copy and paste something, it actually copy and pastes the annotation also. That's interesting. So I borrowed this from a video, but you guys already know how to do the stamp tool, so we don't need the images there. You did a great job with that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the platform of Young Citizens. Get this out of the way there. Go to our home screen. So in our Young Citizens program, you get a ton of materials and resources, which is one thing that makes it so great. You're going to get globes and desk maps and group activity cards, leveled readers to utilize with your students. It is a comprehensive program. All of those resources, except for the globes, are available digitally. So you are going to find everything on your Young Citizens platform to engage your students in your virtual environment. There was a school recently here that a teacher contracted COVID. No one is allowed to go to the school. In that situation, you've got your teacher's guide, you've got all of your resources here with Young Citizens, even though you don't have your physical materials. So let's take a look at some of the things that the teacher has available in Young Citizens and just look at where those are. So if you go down here, I want to start at the teacher materials. All right, so this is the second grade Young Citizens. In the teacher materials, you are going to find supplemental materials at the top, and under that you've got an introduction and then you have all your chapters. So in the supplemental materials, you're going to find several things available to you to help your students learn, such as, let's take a look, graphic organizers. You're going to find those desk maps. So the map we had up at the beginning of the session that we tracked where we were from is available in the program. So that was just one of our United States desk maps. So if you selected that, it would open a PDF. And these are the kindergarten options because I wanted to show those floor maps. But check out this PDF image that pops right up on your screen with all of those maps available to you. So now with your students, the students can be active and engaged directly on the screen with the map. Another thought to do with the map that I am utilizing with my we have a few students that are completely virtual. So with them, they are getting a color copy of each of the maps to take home. I have put it in a sheet protector, and they can write on their maps just like the students at school can do. They can clean them off, they can write on them again, they can fill out their compass rose, they can draw a line from North America east directly on their map, which of course they can do this digitally, but they can also do it at home on their paper. Because we know, with our young students, having something in their hand is important for active engagement. Now, let me go back to the Young Citizen site. And you're also going to get state outline maps. So you don't have to go and hunt those. Everything is here. This Young Citizens digital resource is comprehensive. It is a one-stop shop for everything that you're going to need to teach your students digitally. Let's take a look at one of the chapters. So we'll go to chapter 1. Now you can see here, you have your teacher's guide. All of these will download in a PDF. So there's your teacher's guide. Any handouts that go with the lessons are going to be available there. Your group activity cards. So I want to show you one of those really quickly. So if you click group activity cards, again, the PDF opens. Now we know that among using chunking our learning and using short activities for our younger students especially is going to be important. But also social emotional learning is incredibly important in this time for our students. Our world is a little bit more isolated, especially for some students that don't get to go places. In protecting my son, I have sort of kept him out of the world a little bit. And so I realized I need to get him out a little bit more. He can't just stay at home, to get him out in the world with his mask on. So some of our students have been isolated for their protection. So these group activity cards allow students to collaborate, work together. They're communicating, they're talking about their thoughts, their feelings, and all of that is helping them in more ways than just their content learning. Not only that, with Young Citizens, each card, as you see on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, sorry, there are roles. So each card is going to have a role. So all of the students in the group can have a part in the activity. So they're all working together. Remember, we're chunking, we are using small activities. So like with our kinders, even though this is a second grade unit, describe the Wright brothers' first airplane. So the students could describe a plane, then you could give them some time to go around and pretend to be a plane and come back. So those short little movements are going to help students' engagement. Even it can be even something at their seat. Any songs or finger motions, hand movements that they can do. They could even stay at their seat and just pretend to be a plane. But you can chunk this and you could do one part at a time. So maybe first they're describing the Wright brothers' first airplane in their breakout group. Then how far was the historic flight of the Wright brothers? So they're going to have to find that information together, discussing, and then you've got your presenter that's going to share out the answers. And then there's another activity then to draw a picture that compares the plane to a modern plane. So your students can be actively engaged, whether you are willing to put them in breakout groups or whether you just want to do it whole group. Either way can work in a virtual environment with your students. So let's go back to our platform. Those are the group activity cards again. Then you're going to have teacher resources. The teacher resources are going to be your test, your project. Young Citizens goes from, it follows the C3 framework. So at the end, they're going to do a project and they're going to apply their learning and they're going to put it into their world. And this is a place that you're going to find under teacher resources. You're going to find that project and what students are required to do, rubrics that go along with that project. There are also digital resources. And for this chapter, the digital resource is the group activity cards for the students to have roles in their group activity. And then you've got your answer keys. So everything you've got that you need there to teach your students. And we're going to look at a lesson using the student view in just a few minutes. I do want to point out that there are now discussion boards in Young Citizens. So the students can respond to an activity. You could start your own. Wait, let me move this. So it doesn't look like you can start your own. Yes, new topic. You could start a new topic and that could be where they're sharing out their thoughts, but they can also reply not only in text to you, but they could show an image. How are you feeling today? They could pop up an image of how they're feeling and they could draw themselves. They can also, you can also add in links and things to help guide students. They're a perfect place for students to practice talking with each other and social discourse and how to communicate, how to disagree with someone, and how to understand other people's point of views. It also gives some great writing practice for the students directly in the Young Citizens digital platform. Again, you can have them respond to each other's comments directly in the conversation stem. So I love that they've added this, that this has now been added in with us, with our program, because especially now the communication, sometimes you don't want to do breakout rooms, especially with my kinders. I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but this is a great way for students to have their parent type in some sentences or some things that they say, or with our older students, have them converse next to each other or converse with each other on a particular topic that they're working on. And remember also that if you need to delete anything, you have the ability to delete any comment that is made. So the discussion board is there. I'm going to click the Young Citizens Home button right there. It takes us back home every time. Now, under the activities for Young Citizens, this is where you're going to assign your tests. So you can see grade 2, chapter 1. If you move to the right, you can view what the test would look like for students. You can also assign it right there for students. I'm going to go back home from there, and let's look at your students. Some of you will have your students already rostered in there. But one thing that I want to show you, we're not going to talk about importing students, although it's very easy. If you do have to register your own, it's just filling out a few questions. I want you to look to the right. So you see student 1, and then look right here at the reading level. You can change the student's reading level from anywhere in the digital program for Active Classrooms. So as your students are changing and growing, even though you are not necessarily in person, you will just simply select a student. You'll go down to the bottom of the screen. I'll go ahead and choose my grade, and you can change their level right there. And then save it, and it automatically changes it. So you have that ability then when the students go to their leveled readers in their student account, they're going to have that level of books available to them. And you can go up and down as needed. When I taught 3rd grade, I wanted my students to read all of the levels. So we would start at the beginning and we would move on through the books. Now these books, the levels in Young Citizens are a little bit different than what I'm used to. What they do is they have an easier text. Then as the levels go up, the text gets more challenging and there's a little bit more information. The vocabulary words may be a little bit more advanced, but the content is the same. And we're going to take a look at those level readers in just a little bit. Okay, scroll down here. So you can manage your students there, and then assignments and grades. Just really quickly, I love this for our virtual group. I have to make that go away there. Okay, so we've got an assignment. When your students start an activity, an assignment is automatically created. You don't have to go in and assign anything except the test right now, okay? So when you move to the right and you click grade here, look at this. So this student has not turned it in yet, but they've completed all of the work. Interesting. So you could put some feedback here. Do you need some help in navigating the program? Do you know how to turn it in? You're doing a great job, maybe just some support. So you can give the student feedback that they'll see in their view directly in the Young Citizens program. So I love that for responding for students. You never know what those kind words can do to someone in their day. And then we'll go to the grade book. Again, we have another student that has now completed this vocabulary starter. You would go to this drop down. They cannot see their grade until you publish it. So they're not, if you want them to redo an activity and try again before you publish it and before they see it, you have that control there for your students in the digital platform. And then whatever grading system you use, you can export your data, cut and paste it into your grading system. So you as teachers have a lot of control over what your students are doing and seeing. You have all of your resources available to you directly in Young Citizens. Now, we know that our virtual students, they're going to be at home with their parents, and their parents are not always super tech savvy. Look in the upper right-hand corner. We've got you covered. That question mark is going to be your friend. So we've got a couple user guides. We've got one for you as a teacher. It's going to have images when you download it. It's just a PDF again. It'll have images and step-by-step instructions for you. But there's also a Young Citizens video introduction for parents. So send that link to your parents, let them watch it so they will know not only about the video platform, but a little bit more about the program and what their students are going to be doing. So that's a great way to communicate with parents that's already there. There's also some frequently asked questions that you can see here. And if your questions are not answered right here, go to the right, contact us. You will get quick, fast service. We are committed at Social Studies School Service to your success with this program. Any questions that you have that are not answered here, or even if they are, but you just didn't find it, please reach out. We want to help you. We want you to be successful. So now that you know we've got you covered, let's take a look at some other resources for your parents. So remember this video introduction under the question mark that's right by your avatar. So I'm going to go back home and I'm going to go down to my PDF really quickly and scroll up here. So one of our, get to the top there. Okay, so one of our best practices with digital teaching is beginning with the end in mind. So knowing where you're going and creating those small chunks, those steps, which you're going to see in our lesson are already done for you, for students to follow to be successful. So every chapter starts with a compelling question. So right now, the students know what they're going to be learning about and where they're going with their learning. You're setting the purpose. How do families change? Also, as you're setting your purpose, you can see these responsibilities that are going to be in this chapter. Students will learn how families change over time and how to record such information on timelines. Well, you can tweak that objective for your students. So you could say, this week we're going to be learning how families change over time. How does your family change? How has your family changed recently? How has it changed in the past? And then you could bring in, today we're going to record information on timelines to track when things happen. So you can use these objectives that are at the beginning on the very first page of your chapter to guide your student learning. So you don't have to come up with something. It's all right here for you. Now I'm going to scroll down some more because I want to show you this. Every chapter has a letter home for parents. So your family knows what they're going to be learning about, how they can help. Maybe they can take them on a nature walk. Maybe they can talk to them about something. And it's also going to get planning steps for that project that they're going to be doing. So the families have communication. Okay. So you're going to send that home at the beginning of any chapter with your families. I'm going to go back to our Young Citizens platform here. And I'm going to select my avatar. So we saw the introductory video for parents. You had a very blurry version of the letter home for parents. When you go to your avatar and scroll down to the bottom, you're going to get a parent registration link. Here, the students can create an account. You have to approve that account, And then when you publish assignments and grades, the students are notified of the progress. Sorry, the parents are notified of the students' progress, so they can keep up with what their students are doing through Young Citizens. So that's awesome. I love that. Now that's in the avatar. And you also have some choices on how you want your activities to be assigned. So you do have some choices there on your assignment activities. So I wanted to show you this parent URL. I wanted to show you the letter home where parents can get involved with what you're teaching and they can help, and that parent introductory video. So throughout this, we even have digital resources for the parents. Now I want to end with the bang. So I switched it and I'm going to end with the students. What do the students have in their platform? So in Young Citizens, and I love this feature, so many things don't have this and you have to log in as a student to see what the student is, what it will look like in the student view. In Young Citizens, you have a button here that you can click and you can access student view. So when I select that student view, this opens up. Let me scroll it down so you can see. Now, in your student account, they have access to activities. Those activities are going to be activities such as vocabulary, practice, skill activities. They're going to have their student book digitally available to them. The library, where Lena is going to house all of those leveled readers. Minar has the Patriots Handbook, and when they select Roger, the Atlas will pop up. So all of these resources are available not only to you, but to your students. So you can use the student view to show students what to do, and then they can access it on their device later. You could use it as to help you with teaching a lesson, or the students can navigate through. You could tell them where to go. So we're going to go really quickly to Carlos before we start our lesson. So I want to show you these activities. So when we click Carlos, you can see that your instructions for students would be very straightforward. Even for your kinders, they're going to know Carlos because they've met him in the introduction, they've worked with them, they've seen pictures, they've been reading the comics, so they're going to know all of their friends. So you could say click Carlos and then click chapter 1 or the green book. So when we select chapter 1, it's going to open, as I said, vocabulary activities, the timeline skill that we talked about in our objective. And I'm going to scroll down. So we've got review and starters and all the way down to that chapter test. So those digital activities are going to be available for students. Let's take a quick look at one of the activities and just see what it looks like on the screen. I wanted to show you this also just to give you a little tip on something that you'll need to let your students know when they get started. However, I have used this before our school was shut down at the end of last year with my students, and my kinders could figure it out. They could navigate through, okay? So just if that helps you, kindergartners can do this. They didn't have any trouble with it. So the students are going to follow the directions. They're going to answer the questions. And so what I want to show you is up here in the upper corner. In the upper right-hand corner, you can see one of two. Well, your students are not going to pay any attention to that. They need to click the next button. It says something's not finished. Are you sure you want to continue anyway? So I wanted you to see that with your students as they're completing the digital activities, because they need to not make sure they don't submit it before they finish the entire assignment. And so even with your young students, they knew when they got this pop-up that they had missed something and they needed to go back. So just be aware that that is there. And then you also have accessibility options to the right for those students. such as color scheme, font size, and a zoom control list. Okay, and sometimes changing the color scheme for some of my distractible students was a big help because it just felt different to them, or I'm not sure, but some of my students that were really distractible and had a hard time paying attention, sometimes a simple thing as changing that color just helped them a little. So that's awesome. Guess what else students have? They can have the page read to them.
Vocabulary starter. Complete the sentences by selecting the best answer from each drop-down menu. The part of town.
I'm going to go ahead and click pause and just let you know. As it reads, it would have read, the part of town I live in is a class neighborhood. So instructing students to go ahead and have that drop down open, and remember this is a second grade lesson, can help them because it's going to read those words. If the drop down is not open, it'll say class neighborhood, and the students may not quite know what it's reading at that moment. So I always told mine to make sure that drop down is open as it's reading with your students. But I love that feature. So we're supporting students in their learning. You could easily put this, and I think I feel more comfortable putting it in a breakout room when the students have that support. Since I can't be in every room at all times, I know they have that reading support for them if it's necessary. So that is available not only in the vocabulary and the activities with Carlos, but also in the student book and the library and throughout. So let's look at the lesson really quickly. So I'm just pulling just any lesson on here, and I just want to show you a way that I would navigate the resources with students. So I'm not going to exactly do this like I would be actually teaching it, but I want to talk to you and just talk you through it. So in this lesson, why did your family come to the neighborhood? So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to talk about vocabulary and the A sound in neighbor. So the two new vocabulary words are neighbor and neighborhood. The lessons also include review vocabulary words. So the students are going to see those vocabulary words and use them throughout the book. But in the vocabulary focus, I just think the detail of these lessons are amazing. Check this out. This is directly just in the lesson. It says, you may want to point out, sorry, my sticky fell off. Point out that neighbors, sometimes at school we call the person sitting next to us our neighbor, but a neighbor can also be someone that lives near you. So that is directly in the lesson. Just that little teacher note that you may or may not have thought of. So I just wanted to point out that detail because I love that in this particular lesson, that is directly in the lesson for students to point that out. So the first thing students are going to do is they're going to draw or sketch a map of their school or some neighborhoods. And there's a lot of ways you could do this. You could do a digital map and have students do that using all of the many resources out there. But something that I like to do with my kinders when they're drawing or responding to a book or drawing what their favorite part, I like to have them hold it up to the screen. So they would take their map and they would show it to me, and we could see it in the view where you can see all the gallery view, I think it is. And then I switch it to speaker view. And I've already set up norms because expectations and for your students to know what to expect is very important. So setting norms is another digital strategy. And I'm going to pop these up at the end. I'm sorry that slide got lost in there. Then in speaker view, the students can share and talk about their picture and what they drew. So that's how I like to do it, because it gives everyone a voice. I am focusing on their social emotional. We can hit a lot of the misconceptions that I find. We can hit directly in these little short conversations. So those are fun. Of course, with our kinders, we know sometimes it's bouncing up and down, but they really love it. And you can, no, I guess you can't do that with them. I was thinking you can pause your screen sharing, but I don't think you can do that for somebody else. Wouldn't that be nice if you could pause the screen sharing on Kinder so that their map would not move around and bounce around? Okay, so they're going to display that. Then they could label the name of their town and talk about towns. Now you're going to emphasize the importance of text features. Young citizens focus greatly on those English language arts skills or the literacy skills. So now we're going to have students we're going to explain to students that comics are also text features. So we're going to have them go to their student book. We're going to chapter 1, the green book. And they're going to turn to page 17. So they're going to use their arrow buttons and go to page 17. So then you can read the comic or have the students read it to themselves. Something interesting here when the read aloud read this comic. It says, "Welcome to the neighborhood. I've lived here a long time. Not you, Harry." So something that I've noticed when it reads aloud, sometimes that natural inflection is not there. So that was a great time to talk about, oh, wait, we know Peyton. We know Peyton's already lived here. Oh, there's somebody new there. This must be Harry. Thanks, Lena. So how should it have been read, students? I've lived here a long time. Not you, Harry. So that actually was a fun little teaching point that I had to bring up with my students. Oh, what? That didn't make sense? Let's listen to it again. Let's look at the pictures. So we got deeper into what was going on in the comic through that. So it was actually a blessing in disguise. We had a lot of great conversations about that. So the students would read the first paragraph. You could mute everyone, have them read it, have it read to them if they need to, have them read it aloud. You could do breakout and partner read directly with them. In there, they're going to talk about the bold words, and then you can modify those, and the modifications are directly in the lesson. So that was just a very quick view of moving through a lesson in this virtual environment. So that was lesson 1, part A. So I hope you could see, even my kinders could sit through that, but for sure our second graders could. So now we've got a small chunk here. Then maybe you switch and move to another content area, or maybe you have them do an activity. Here they could play a game or sing a song with the students. So I love the features that are embedded in active class, in Young Citizens, I'm sorry, I keep saying that, to support your students in you teaching virtually. So let's go back home real quick and let's take a look at those leveled readers. There's Lena, pick a book from the library. Okay, so your students would have their level, but here you can select the level. And since we're in grade 2, we have more options than kindergarten. Sorry, I flipped through that really quickly. There are more options than in the kinder for these students. So you can really differentiate. So let's just go to an on level with the second grade. And this I want to show you this in, this is going to be in every grade level. All of the leveled books, when they open the leveled reader, whether it's digital or their physical book, in the front cover are pre-reading activities. This pre-reading activity says look at the timeline on page 14. Try to find some of the words that appear in more than one entry. So that sets their purpose, that gets their thinking started and ready to read. So the students are going to read through the book. Remember, you have your full screen and your reading tool right here for students to have it read aloud if they need it. Now I want to stop real quick on page 14. So here's the timeline and here's what students would be looking at. Another way I like to start, which is absolutely easy to do with virtual, because it sort of looks the same to me. I like to go over the vocabulary words with students, which are going to be in the back of the book in the glossary. I like to do a picture walk with my students and that pre-reading activity to get them ready. Another good idea to do, especially in our digital environment, because you're not always there with each group, is to read through the book and predict places that your students may have trouble. So maybe there was a word that you think, oh, I'm not sure if my group knows what that would be. Or maybe the sentence is structured in such a way that may be a little bit confusing for your students. If you can plan for those first, you can set the students up for success that way also. I found that that's even more important in the digital environment because when I'm there, I can address it immediately. So planning ahead is another strategy for our virtual world. And then we also have post-reading activities at the end. So the pre-reading and post-reading are the same no matter what level book. So the only difference is going to be in some of the content and the vocabulary words. I love that because now, doesn't matter what reading level they are, you can group them in a breakout room and they can work on these activities, utilizing primary sources, and all they need is their book to do any of these. So I'm going to go back home. And just really quickly, the Patriots Handbook has songs and national symbols and primary source documents. So when the students open that, again, it can be read to them, holidays. And then I'll go back and we'll flip through that. But I want you to see all of these resources that are available for you to make their social studies time a success. So in the atlas, again, it is read to them, the text on the page. There are great illustrations that you can use with other lessons. You don't have to go and find things. One-stop shop with Young Citizens. All right, so I want to go back to that PowerPoint slide that seemed to have gotten lost in here. There. Okay. Sorry to do this on the back end, but let's look at where this was in Young Citizens. Oh, stink. I forgot that it does that. Oh gosh. Okay. If it's okay with you, we're just going to look at that slide because this will take me forever to get through. Okay. So in a successful virtual environment, also blended environment, begin with the end in mind. Plan your activities structured toward a goal. And with Young Citizens, we have the compelling question. We have the guiding objectives, not only for the lesson and the activity, but also for the whole unit. So the students are going to know where they need to be by the end. And that is a great way to plan. Establish those expectations so students know. In Zoom, establish those norms. Students need to know what they're doing. They need to have a purpose so they know what they're supposed to be learning and where they're going to be going in the lesson. And that is provided to you in Active Classroom. The materials are available. Make sure you have all the materials there with you You can even do an outline and post it behind your camera to help guide you through the activity. Frequent short activities. Put in some small movement things, some small differing activities to keep those students engaged. There are so many in the lessons embedded already in Young Citizens, you may not have to add too many. Several of the kindergarten lessons start with songs and hand movements. So if I see them getting a little antsy, we can go back to that song real quick. Or you may want to, if you're doing the map activity with your second graders, when they show their map, maybe you have 5 share, and then a little bit later you have 5 more share, so that it keeps it going and interactive. Have interactive discussion. Use that discussion board, and also talk with your students. There are plenty of opportunities for students to communicate, not only with their level readers, but the group activity cards and in the lessons. Social emotional learning throughout. Make sure that you're focusing on this throughout, and the feedback and the talking with students. Allow all the little hints that say, oh, you're not done with this activity. The read aloud feature, all great for enhancing the social emotional learning of your students in your social studies Young Citizens program. And communication. Students can communicate with you through the discussion board, but also parents. Parents have the letter home. They can access and know what their students are doing in active class and Young Citizens. Once you publish those grades, they can see them and they'll get a notification. So I think that you can see there were so many out there, but these were the ones that I saw most often. And Young Citizens in our digital program embeds all of those. So if you, oops, that was the wrong slide. So I'm going to go back to the front here. So that is going to be the end. If we have any questions, I'll be happy to answer, or comments or any concerns that you have. So my kindergarten teacher also, if you can see other ways to keep your kindergartners focused, I would love to hear that, but I hope I gave you a lot of great ideas throughout the session.